Is Clemson still elite? Best discussion, debate, and analysis right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by. And if the Tigers and Dabo Swinney are to prove that they can reach back to the top of the mountain, they will get a chance to do it right away. Let's look at 2024 for the Clemson Tigers, and it starts in Atlanta against maybe not the defending national champion, but maybe still the best program and team in college football. Georgia coming off 13-1 August 31st. Mark it down. The last time these teams got together was in Charlotte in 2021. It was a really good ball game where Christopher Smith raced off with a pick six to win the game for Georgia. JT Daniels against DJ Uiagalelei. But JT Daniels was not the Georgia starting quarterback by the end of the year. But the Bulldogs had a national championship with Stetson Bennett. And again, it's Clemson, it's Georgia in Atlanta. Huge matchup. These two should get together more often, and they have in past generations, past decades. They had a home-and-home series about 10 years ago with Mark Richt and Dabo Swinney on the sidelines, and they split those games. Then on to September 7th. As we look at the first 5 games of the season, this is where the Clemson season is going to be decided. Can't look past App State, always a quality team in the group of 5. Just ask North Carolina, and App State coming off a 9-5 season. Then a bye week before North Carolina State comes to Death Valley, and the Wolfpack won the matchup last year and have won 2 of the last 3, and Dave Doran's team at 9-4 this past season. Clemson leads the all-time series 60-30, and Dabo is 8-2 against Dave Doran. Then it's the Stanford matchup as Clemson takes on the first of the newbies from the Pac-12. And there's been one previous matchup between these two schools. You got to go back to the 1986 Gator Bowl, a 27-21 game right there. And then the matchup that still probably will determine the conference. It did this past season, even though Clemson slumped at 4-4. If they would have pulled this one out at home, in which they controlled most of the game, they outgained Florida State, but they made the big blunders, the big mistakes, and the Seminoles raced off with an overtime win. And it was the first time Florida State defeated Clemson since 2014. So Clemson gets the rematch at Doak Campbell against Florida State. Then the schedule lightens up. At Wake Forest, a decent matchup for Clemson the past few years, but of course Dave Clawson needs to rebuild this club after a 4-8 campaign. Virginia 3-9. Then an off week before Louisville looks to be the toughest remaining game. The Cardinals coming off the ACC championship game and have a new quarterback in Tyler Shook. Then it's a tricky date possibly in Blacksburg. Brent Pry and the program showing some life last season in his second year. 7 wins overall with a bowl victory over Tulane, 5-3 in the ACC. Kyron Drones back at quarterback for the Hokies, accounted for 22 touchdowns, only 3 picks. Then Clemson and Pitt. I would normally tab this as a interesting November game going north for the Tigers, but man, was Pitt lousy last year at 3-9. The Citadel is the tune-up, warm-up for the big Palmetto State rivalry game against South Carolina that Clemson took back control of with a 16-7 win in 2023 to raise their advantage all-time to 73, 43, and 4. In breaking down these schedules, it's always been important, especially in these 14-team conferences with only 8 conference games, to talk about the 5 games that are missed, because the scheduling discrepancies are mammoth, and they're only growing now that you've got 17 teams. So you play 8 games, and so there are 8 other teams in the conference that you do not play. So to match up those games against some other contending teams, and we did that on our Miami show, looking at the Hurricane schedule against Florida State, and there's a noticeable gap in the 5 different games that they play. So who does Clemson miss? Well, it's Miami and North Carolina would be the most likely, most difficult games. Syracuse, Boston College, Georgia Tech, and Duke also. 2 of the newcomers in Cal and SMU will not see Clemson in 2024. Give Georgia a game, get through the first 5 at possibly 4-1, and Clemson could be back running the ACC in 2024. Leave your comments down below, questions as well, right here at the Voice of College Football.